How's it going, everybody? DB back with another Iowa State preview. Today we're talking Baylor at Iowa State coming up this weekend. The 17th ranked Baylor Bears come into town at 2-1 in their opening conference game, along with Iowa State at 3-0. Should be a great game, and I'm joined today by BaylorBearhead on Twitter. I'll go ahead and share all of his links down below so you can go give him some love. And yeah, BaylorBearhead, how's it going? Thursday afternoon, getting ready for the game this weekend. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. Just getting over being a little bit sick and just excited for the weekend. It's going to be some good games, especially our matchup.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely a great way to start conference play.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited, especially after last year's matchup. It ended up coming down to the end of the game, and even earlier in the game, there'd been a little bit of a lucky a lucky touchdown scored by us that kind of gave us a lead that we wouldn't have got in most games. So, I mean, a replay of last year's game would be awesome. Just me as a football fan, win or lose, I'm just down for a good game.
Iowa State being on the opposite end of a lucky touchdown, I never would have never would have guessed that one. But
hey, at least you guys finally got your payback in the Cyhawk game.
We did. We finally got that monkey off our back. So Baylor's one loss was at BYU, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And that one went to overtime, right?
Yeah, it went to double overtime.
Double overtime.
Games where I think by the end of the game, both teams were kind of, only talking about their kickers at the end of the game. We
right.
A point early on, then they missed a field goal at the end of the game. Both of those would have won the game for either team. And then in overtime, the first overtime, both of us missed our field goal.
Oh,
so
geez.
It's games that realistically, if you're looking at the stats of those two kickers, could have gone either way if they just wouldn't have had the worst games of their careers for both of them respectively.
Right.
So it was a good matchup. I was actually there in person and got to meet some BYU fans and good atmosphere, but kind of a horrible loss to take home with you after being on the road for that.
Yeah, especially for how late that game went. It just kind of because I remember I think I got home that night and it was like midnight here and the game was still going on because obviously it was in the mountain time.
Yeah, I think we didn't stadium until like 1 a.m. So
yeah,
pretty late.
So Baylor's quarterback Blake Shapen this year, right? That's who it is?
Yeah, Blake Shapen. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been with Baylor a couple of years now, but he wasn't.
This is his second year actually playing on the team. But last season he didn't start until the second to last regular season game.
Okay.
Still kind of getting his feet under him a little bit, but at this point he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's definitely comfortable with the system at this point.
Yep.
So, I guess what are your expectations for Baylor in this one? Is it because I get the genuine that's not a word. The general sense of the game is it'll be two super run first teams. It'll be a line of scrimmage game. Is that kind of what you're expecting from Baylor this week? Is try to control the line, get the run game going, and just pound the rock?
Oh, absolutely. If you're comparing this year's Baylor offense to last year's, we definitely have a much more generally experienced O-line who's playing together pretty well. We are missing Khalil Keith, one of our guards. He's probably our third or fourth best offensive lineman. So for most teams, that wouldn't be, it's your third or fourth best, but considering our quality of play on our line in general, I mean,
right.
he's a pretty good player. So, our O-line looks pretty solid this year. And, I mean, to be honest, our receivers are just maybe not as fast as last year. So, I mean, last year we were already a pretty run-heavy team. This year, I mean, strength is in the box. So we should just be running it quite a bit.
Yeah, I was noticing that you guys have your leading receiver has 9 catches on the year, and it's Ben Sims, the tight end.
Yeah.
So
don't sleep on Sims as a deep threat though. He's actually one of those guys that'll be running posts and fades pretty consistently.
Okay.
So, yeah, we actually put him out times. So he's not just a tight end. He's kind of like a anywhere on the line of scrimmage type player.
Okay, so keep an eye on Ben Sims this weekend.
Oh yeah.
It is kind of it's kind of similar to what it feels like. It's kind of similar to what Iowa State did with Charlie Kohler, is what you're saying.
Oh, definitely.
He's not necessarily always the safety valve, but he's a consistent guy that Shapen can go to. and
Oh yeah,
he
he's
can
not
he
just a
can
pass
stretch the
threat
field.
either.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a pretty good blocker too. So he's one of those guys that I don't know if you've heard anything about Jeff Grimes talk about our offensive philosophy, but essentially we try to run a few good plays out of as many different lineups and formations as possible. So
Okay.
Ben might be running to catch out of a true tight end position, or he might be blocking out of the slot. It's really just
Right.
we put him where we feel like he can at least make some type of impact, and we run whatever we want to run.
I've always liked offenses that keep that mentality because it feels like for so many times like with Iowa State, if Brees Hall was in the game, we were running it. If Jirel was in the game, we were throwing it. If Charlie Kohler was split out wide, it was a passing down. It just felt so predictable that you knew what kind of play Iowa State was going to run. So I've always respected teams that like they'll split the tight end out wide and then they'll run inside zone or something just to draw somebody
Yeah,
out of the middle or something like that. So
yeah. One
that's
of our favorite goal line route combinations that we like to do is we'll put like an unbalanced like two tight ends on the right side and run like a go post from our tight ends off of that. So it's stuff
oh
like that. It's literally we dare the defense to try and guess what our formations lean towards, and we do the
right.
opposite.
So then outside the receiving core, it looks like you guys have a pretty solid just trio of running backs.
Yeah,
Is that
I don't know if I would say trio. I feel like we have four guys that are getting consistent playing time. Plus, Josh Fleeks hasn't even really touched the field yet. I'm
right?
not sure what that's all about, but for those Iowa State fans listening that don't necessarily know, he was our wide receiver 3 last year, and he got bumped to running back, and so far he's been our running back 5, which it seemed kind of an interesting choice on the coaching staff's part,
Yeah,
considering he had a lot of playing time last year as a receiver, but I mean, they haven't even really fielded him yet, so maybe they're saving him for something. I don't know.
right. Yeah, I guess I didn't even see that Tay McWilliams also has 18 carries on the year. He's right up there with Jones.
Yeah.
Is there one guy out of that group that you think stands out above the rest, or is it just genuinely a running back by committee, whoever's playing better on the down or the day?
So our running backs are kind of interesting because I feel like in general, um, the way that our offense runs, like I was saying, we try our best to do as much with the same personnel as possible. So maybe we have our better runner in, which would probably be at this point in the year Williams. He's proven to be pretty good between the tackles. So maybe we'll put him in, but we'll still throw him a pass. Or maybe we'll put in Mick Williams, who's been a little bit more solid of a receiver, and we'll run him up the gut. Like it really is, you know, it's one of those things where when they go out on the field, it's like, okay, I know their strengths, I know their weaknesses, but I don't really know why they got put on the field. Maybe they're a decoy, maybe they're actually going to do what they're good at. I, it really is up in the air as to who's best at what at this point.
Okay.
And I think that like any Baylor fan worth their salt could really give you a definitive answer on that.
Okay, I like it. I like it because I know like with Iowa State, we've got Jairo Brock's a pretty solid just first guy, and then we've got Eli Sanders, Deion Silas, and Cartavius Norton are all three super young guys. Sanders and Norton are both freshmen, and then Deion Silas played a little bit last year. Um, so I know Iowa State fans are really excited for that trio that are right behind Jairo Brock, but Brock's still just the solid RB1. And then we're just kind of waiting to see which of those three guys kind of separates themselves. But I know Iowa State fans are really excited about all three of those guys. So it's interesting to
And
see just that comparison across the board.
correct me if I'm wrong, but coming into the season, it was pretty much understood that Brock was going to be RB1 too, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
been a thing for a while.
Yeah. So I think it's been pretty well known that Brock was going to be RB1 just throughout the entire season, even just to make sure that all the younger guys kind of try to separate themselves from one another.
Mhm.
So then, depending on what happens, I think it'll be interesting what happens next year. To be honest, whether Brock stays or do the three guys behind him all also stay? Does anybody transfer out? I wouldn't blame anybody for transferring out. You got three guys that are all basically the same age. That you'd be competing with and splitting carries with. So I think it'll be interesting to see just what happens with the running back room as the season goes on, and then even into next year. Um, so yeah, I think that'll be a fun room to watch out for. Just continuing to
Yeah,
move
for
forward.
sure. And the thing with Iowa State is, I'm sure that you already see this obviously because you're an Iowa State fan, but I feel like the rest of the conference is kind of starting to realize that it doesn't really matter necessarily what the name of the guy is that's going to be in Matt Campbell's system. There's always going to be some pretty solid skill guys there.
Yeah,
Because I've been following recruiting for a little bit for you guys, and I mean, it just seems like 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, you guys are still going to be perfectly fine. It's not like obviously losing the offensive talent you did last year is a
right,
hit, but it's not going to impact you guys as much as most teams.
right. And I think that's one of my other like I didn't put this in the hot take article that I had in the preseason, but I've been talking about it a lot on Twitter. Is everyone was talking about how Iowa State was just going to have this significant drop off, and I did not think that was going to be the case at all. I mean, granted, we went 7-5 in the regular season last year, so there was a lot more expectations than 7-5, and we ended up kind of disappointing. But there's all these Iowa State's gonna go 4-8, 5-7. Like they'll be lucky to get 6-6 in a bowl game, and I'm like, well, hold on a minute, like Brock Purdy and Brees Hall and them, like that was so much talent that we had. But like Hunter Deckers and Jairo Brock are both, at least recruiting wise, are both better recruits than those two guys. So it's not like we don't have the talent to get there. It's just that it was such a lack of experience because we had so many vets on the team last year.
And let's be honest, like the group that you had last year was not a 7-5 group. Like one of my big things that I'm a big fan of tracking once the season finishes is a
Right.
post game win percentage.
Right.
Um, Iowa State went 7-5 in the real world, but if they would have played the exact same way against the same teams, most of the time they would have finished somewhere about 9-3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, actual quality of product on the field, like if you're just discounting, lucky plays like what happened against y'all at Baylor last year,
Right.
there's just all sorts of scenarios. And I know this probably hurts as an Iowa State fan to hear. You actually did have a very quality team that had some truly unlucky bounces through the season. So
I mean, I think about that as the entire Matt Campbell era is we've been in like I keep tweeting about how many one possession losses we have because everyone talks about Nebraska was 9 plays from 12-0 last year, and it's like Iowa State was basically the same, but we were like 6 plays away from 12-0. I mean, you look at the Oklahoma game, there was that Brock Purdy fumble at the end of the half that got returned for a touchdown. You look at the Baylor game, obviously. You look at the Iowa game, there was the Brees Hall fumble at the goal line that Iowa returned for a touchdown, and that ended up being a 10-point game because of that. I mean, you look at all those things that go like Brees Hall never fumbles, and he put it on the ground against because that's that was part of just the Iowa curse with us, I guess. But it does kind of just go back to what you're saying is like Iowa State just needed to have. And I feel like Iowa kind of set the tone for that this year. Iowa State just needed to win an ugly game. Like we needed to win an ugly game that we turned the ball over and we had 2 blocked punts and we didn't feel like we should have won the game, but we did anyway. And it kind of feels like Iowa State just needed that, and we finally got one this year. So I don't know. I feel like it's interesting. I do want to see us play Baylor because obviously Iowa's offense is dead last in the country. So it's not like Ohio and Southeast Missouri State or anything too terribly special either. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what we play against a ranked opponent here.
yeah, and I think it should be a pretty interesting matchup because probably in general, even though you guys did lose a lot last season, I think that your offense has a little bit more burst power, like maybe a little bit more dynamic.
Right.
Just maybe because of the wideout position.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely agree with that.
Be the big separating factor. So, but one thing I am interested to see for our offense versus your defense is I do know that you guys had several guys from your defense that were some rotation players, and I think one of your starters at DB transferred out this year. I think you guys ended up losing 4 defensive guys in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
All impact players, but I do want to see how your DB group looks against a offense with at least a semblance of a pulse.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we lost. I think the biggest one on the defense, at least to me, was Isheem Young. Went to Ole
Mm.
Miss, um, and then we've filled that spot with Bo Freeler, who was a freshman last year, and he was kind of taking playing time from Isheem towards the end of the season, and then he actually ended up playing I think most of the Cheez-It Bowl, um, and he actually got hurt in the Iowa game, but it sounds like he'll be back this weekend. So I am excited to see how he plays against a Baylor offense that, like we were saying, pounds the ball, because that was Isheem Young's kind of bread and butter, was he wasn't afraid to come up and pop somebody.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to see how that gets filled. And then obviously at linebacker with Gary Vaughn and Orion Vance coming back, and then Colby Reeder filling in that sort of Mike Rose spot. Um, he's played pretty well, but again, it's been against some offenses that are less than stellar. So excited to see
And
where it goes.
just for your DBs last year, how many did you guys have graduate? Was it, I think you guys had two, is that right, of your starters?
Um, so we had Isheem Young leave. We had Anthony Johnson went to safety. Oh, geez. I'm gonna look foolish here, but I'm gonna Google it because 2021 Ohio State football roster. Because I'm trying to think, because we had hold on here. Oh,
Oh, Greg,
Greg Eisworth
yeah.
graduated. Um,
And then I don't know if how much actual quality time on the field he got, but I'm looking, and Young graduated too. So
yeah. So Craig McDonald transferred. I know. And then like we said, we lost Greg Eisworth graduated. Datron Young's gone. Tavon Kyle's still here. He's a redshirt senior. And then the two younger guys, Miles Purchase, the freshman, and TJ Tampa, the redshirt, or I think he's a junior this year. I say
mm,
younger guys, he's a junior, but I've been really impressed with both of those guys. I think they've been really impressive to me at corner. Again, been kind of lackluster offenses, so I'm excited to see how they perform against a Power Five offense that can move the ball. um, but yeah, I feel like DB was one of our weaker positions last year, and it's actually one of our stronger positions on defense this year. Just
really,
just 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 with those two, because I've been, like I said, I've been really impressed with TJ Tampa and Miles Purchase.
well, I
Um,
guess this week, and you were talking earlier about your preseason prediction about how you guys were going to square up against all the Texas teams.
yeah,
So uh, I think Baylor, out of all the Texas teams, might not be the ones that'll test you as much with our wide receivers. I think maybe that'll be Texas out of the Texas teams, but um, I think there still should be some pretty good receiver play.
yeah,
Um, we'll see what happens. It should make all of our listeners pretty happy to know that I do preseason projections every year. Just kind of, only Baylor, what teams are going to win to, lose to. So far, I'm 13-2 on my picks. So pretty accurate, I
pretty
feel
good,
like.
pretty good.
I've got Iowa State winning this weekend. So um, everything looks geared for Iowa State to have a strong home performance where, you know, good receiver play, solid action at running back. I mean, defense overall, you guys are sitting at, I think, eighth in the country at FEI currently. That's not really accurate until week 4 or 5,
Right.
but or weeks 5 or 6. But we're getting pretty close, and you guys still look pretty solid statistically. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I guess that kind of leads into the last little part here, the picks here. I know we kind of talked about it before we started recording. The spread is all over the place with this game. It's within 3 points both ways, but depending on where you look, it's Iowa State by 3, Baylor by 1.5, Iowa State by 1.5, Baylor by 2, whatever. Um, this feels like it's going to be a close game regardless. I don't feel like any team blows the other team out here.
No, I agree.
So we got the predict. Do you have a score prediction for us, or just Iowa State wins it at home, or?
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like this last week it really was kind of nice where we got to sort out some issues on our O line that we had. Going up against BYU, we had a little bit of a struggle sometimes pushing on the right side, um, and we kind of rotated some different players in and looked at different looks. So I think our run game is going to be a little bit more solid. So maybe what would be a good prediction for this? I'd say Baylor 24, Iowa State 29.
Okay.
Think
I like it. So I mentioned that I'd gone back and forth on this. I projected in my hot takes article that Iowa State would sweep the state of Texas. And then after I wrote it, I was kind of like, well, Baylor might get us cuz that game always goes back and forth. So maybe, that's why it's a hot take. Maybe it won't happen. And then we played against Southeast Missouri State and we had a comfortable week 1 win. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll beat Baylor at home. And then I saw you guys you guys lost to BYU, but I was like, BYU's strong. It was a home game. It went to overtime. It went to, extra time or whatever. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that makes a little bit of sense. And then BYU got slobber knocked by Oregon. So now
yeah,
I'm
that was
like,
so sad to watch.
was that just BYU forgot to wake up that morning? Was that Oregon's actually really good and Georgia's just 150 points better than everybody? So now I'm kind of back leaning towards Iowa State. It could go up in the air, but I've got Iowa State 23-21. So depending on where you're looking at, that's right around the spread. I don't know if I would touch this game on the spread either way. We're not. This is really a betting channel, but I don't know if I'd touch the spread either way. But it sounds like we both have Iowa State winning a close one here. So I guess to close out, you have Iowa State winning, but what does Baylor have to do to win this game?
I think one of the big keys for us that has been a little bit disappointing for me watching so far is that I think that our defense isn't nearly as disruptive as it was towards the end of last season. And a lot of that is normally pretty true at the beginning of the year for most teams. Everybody's still trying to kind of mesh. And I think if we're going to win this game and, if there was that 1 in 10 type game where we did win in some kind of dominant fashion, it would definitely be because our defense stepped up and was more disruptive. Be it, turnovers, sacks, whatever. I think that was one of the things that really catapulted us at times last season. That gave us those double-digit wins over some quality teams. Was just the fact that our defense was able to step up in big games. So I don't see our offense having a scenario where we completely tear up y'all's defense, but I could
Right.
definitely see a scenario where our D line just, I know that you guys have a pretty solid O line, but if our D line decides to come out there and have a day, we've got, one of the deepest, most experienced D lines in the country. So
Yeah.
that would be a big turning point for us.
I think for Iowa State to win this game, I kind of just have the opposite. Is Iowa State has to win in the trenches if they're going to win this game. The offensive line for Iowa State's been kind of up and down this year. I feel like it's been one of those positions of emphasis for Matt Campbell his entire tenure here. Is just the offensive line has been so shaky every single year that he's been here. But I think if there was ever a time for the offensive line to show up, I think it's the home opener of Big 12 play. So I think for Iowa State to win, those guys got to show up, and I think they do against like you said, a really experienced defensive front.
Another thing I'd add on to that, because now you got me thinking about O lines. One of the things that really beat us against BYU, and I mean there were probably 3 or 4 different drives where we totally shot ourselves in the foot with this. Some of our more experienced O linemen were just committing the most atrocious false starts when the crowd was getting rowdy. So I know it's always
Yeah,
back trice. I don't think that that's going to change, but I hope, one of the things that might end up either killing us or helping us out is just how well our team has kind of learned from that experience against BYU and whether we're still kind of shooting ourselves in the foot or not. So that'd be another thing I'd add.
awesome. All right, well, thank you, Baylor Bearhead, for joining me. Iowa State Baylor preview. It's been a pleasure. We went a little bit longer than I wanted, but that's all good. We love talking football here. Do you have any final words for the audience about Baylor, about Iowa State, about the game, or anything else Baylor related?
Uh, I mean, when I went up to BYU, I'm not headed to Iowa State this game, just for y'all listening. But when I went up to BYU last time, all of us had a very good experience with all the fans up there. So any of y'all Iowa State fans that see a guy in Baylor gear, just go ahead and say hi, show him a good time. Best of luck to Iowa State, man. I've always respected y'all's program, and I hope it's a good game.
Hell yeah, that's what we love to see. Expecting a good game, a close one in the trenches. For Baylor Bearhead, this has been DB Sports. If you guys enjoyed the content, be sure to click the like button. If you didn't like it, click the dislike button. It really helps me as a creator know what you guys like to see more and less of. But if you enjoyed the content and you want to see more, click that subscribe button down below. Click the bell icon so you get notified whenever I go live, whenever I upload a video. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.